Welcome. Today we're diving into this massive, deep research report titled The Architecture of Necessity, a comprehensive metaphysical, physical, and cognitive analysis of determinism. Now, I know that's a mouthful, but get ready, because we are going on a totally mind-bending journey today. We're taking a trip all the way from the absolute unbreakable laws of the cosmos right down to the microscopic electrical firing of your very own neurons. And as we unpack this explainer, I really want you to stop and ask yourself a serious question. Think about the very last choice you made today. Was it actually your own, or was it, mathematically necessitated since literally the dawn of time?
Okay, let's dive right into this. Here's our roadmap for today. First, the clockwork universe. Second, glitches in physical laws. Third, the free will dilemma. Fourth, your brain before you decide. And finally, justice without moral blame. We are moving logically straight from the universe down to the human mind and then zooming out to practical society.
All right, Section 1, the clockwork universe, defining global physical determinism. Before we can even touch human choices, we've got to set up the terrifying perfection of the ultimate deterministic universe.
So this brings us to a massive foundational concept, global physical determinism. The research outlines this really elegant mathematical framework. Think of it just like a formula. You've got proposition P, which is the complete, exact state of the world right at this very second, plus L, the unbroken laws of nature. And together, those two things logically entail Q. What's Q? Well, it's the exact future trajectory of literally everything in existence. We aren't talking about some vague concept of destiny here. This is rigid mathematical necessity. If you know the past state and you know the physical laws, boom, the future is perfectly uniquely fixed.
Now, what's really interesting here, and it's so easy to mix these up, is distinguishing physical determinism from fatalism. Fatalism relies on this idea of teleological or divine intervention. It's the idea that an event is inevitable no matter what actions you take leading up to it. But global physical determinism, entirely different beast. It's all about an unbroken chain of cause and effect governed purely by descriptive physical laws. So your actions absolutely matter in a deterministic universe, because your actions are the necessary links in that unbreakable chain. It's not about a destined outcome, right? It's about the relentless machinery of cause and effect.
So we've got this perfect clockwork model of the universe. But physics isn't always that tidy. Let's hit Section 2, glitches in physical laws, looking at supertasks and spontaneous motion. Okay, look at this contrast. On one side, we have Laplace's demon. Conceived way back in 1820, this is the ultimate deterministic ideal. Imagine an omniscient intellect that knows the exact position and momentum of every single particle in the universe. Using Newtonian laws, this demon could perfectly calculate the past and the future in just a single formula. Ultimate predictability, right? But then, on the other side, we have Norton's dome. John D. Norton designed this mathematically valid model of a radially symmetrical dome. If you balance a point mass exactly at the frictionless apex of this dome, Newtonian mathematics shows it can sit there indefinitely, and then, at any completely arbitrary moment, just spontaneously slide down without any external force acting on it whatsoever. No wind, no bump, just movement. It's mathematically valid, spontaneous indeterminism sitting right smack in the middle of classical physics. Wild, right?
And the glitches actually don't stop there. Think about a time frame of exactly 1 second. This ties into something called a supertask, designed by John Perez Lauradogia. He theorized an infinite collection of identical point masses spaced out at geometrically decreasing intervals along a line. If you introduce a moving particle to strike the first mass, the momentum transfers through an infinite sequence of collisions. But because the distance literally keeps halving, that infinite series of collisions completes in exactly 1 second. The result? Both the kinetic energy and the momentum just vanish from the system. Poof! They violate classical conservation laws completely. It mathematically proves that classical physics actually isn't strictly deterministic in all edge cases.
All right, with those massive physical laws and mathematical anomalies in our back pocket, let's zoom in to the human experience. Section 3, the free will dilemma, checking out compatibilism versus incompatibilism.
Over time, the social and cognitive sciences actually developed their own frameworks, which the report calls regional determinisms. Fields like biology, psychology, economics, and linguistics all propose that human behavior is determined by specific, non-physical organizing principles. Now, it's absolutely crucial to note how these frameworks have been applied historically. For instance, the source report objectively details how biological determinism, which is the idea that behavior and intelligence are strictly governed by genetics, was historically leveraged as an ideology in the 19th and 20th centuries to justify social hierarchies, restrictive immigration, and scientific racism. It's a stark reminder of the massive historical impact theories of determinism can have when they're applied to human populations.
When it comes to psychological determinism, Arthur Schopenhauer dropped this absolute mic drop quote. Man can do what he wills, but he cannot will what he wills. I mean, let that sink in. The idea here is that, sure, you're free to act on your desires. If you want a coffee, go get a coffee. But you are not the author of the underlying desire itself. You didn't choose to want the coffee. Those underlying desires are dictated by prior factors, your genetics, your upbringing, your environment, factors that are ultimately completely beyond your control.
Let's see how this builds into one of the most famous arguments against free will out there, Dirk Pereboom's four-case argument. We walk sequentially through the case of Professor Plum, who decides to commit a murder. Okay, step 1. Neuroscientists directly manipulate Plum's brain with radio technology to make him do it. Intuitively, we all say, hey, he's not morally responsible, right? Step 2. There's no radio, but he was genetically programmed from birth to commit the murder. Again, intuitively, not responsible. Step 3. He's just raised in a highly conditioning culture that perfectly ensures he will murder. Still not responsible. And finally, step 4, physical determinism. Plum is an ordinary human, but his choice was causally determined by the past and the laws of nature. Notice how the immediate external control gradually vanishes across these steps. But mathematically, that lack of ultimate control remains exactly the same.
So this brings us to a really crucial question. Take a breath and think about this one. Pereboom applies the moral principle of consistency here, meaning we have to treat like cases alike. If we agree that direct neuromanipulation completely removes a person's moral responsibility, doesn't universal physical determinism do the exact same thing? If your actions are just the necessary result of the universe's initial conditions, are you really the ultimate source of your choices?
To answer that, we've got to zoom all the way down into the cognitive neuroscience of your own head. Section 4, Your Brain Before You Decide, the Neuroscience of Agency.
Back in 1983, Benjamin Libet ran this totally foundational experiment. He hooked participants up to an EEG and told them, hey, flex your wrists whenever you feel the spontaneous urge to do so. And this timeline perfectly maps his infamous findings. At 0 milliseconds, the muscle actually activates. But 200 milliseconds before that, the participant consciously realized they had the urge to move. Now, here's the kicker. 550 milliseconds before the movement, Libet detected a ramping electrical signal in the brain called the readiness potential. This created a 350 millisecond gap where the brain was unconsciously preparing to move long before the person even realized they wanted to move. I mean, for decades, people used this exact gap to claim free will was literally just a neurological illusion.
But you know, science evolves. And the irony here is that early neuroscience's claim of an illusion was actually debunked by newer, more rigorous science. Specifically, a researcher named Aaron Scherger developed something called the leaky stochastic accumulator model. He revealed that this readiness potential isn't some secret, unconscious decision being made behind your back. It's actually just spontaneous neural noise, literally random fluctuations in your brain, that happens to cross a threshold. Researchers were then mathematically backward averaging that noise to make it look like a deliberate preparatory signal. Mind blown, right? And to prove this, Uri Maz and his colleagues ran an incredible study where choices actually mattered in the real world. Instead of just mindlessly flexing a wrist, participants had to choose which real-world charities to donate money to. The findings? When choices are totally arbitrary, you still see that readiness potential. But when choices are deliberate and meaningful, the readiness potential completely vanishes. Your brain just operates differently when you're engaged in actual rational deliberation. That unconscious brain buildup disappears, which keeps deliberate free will very much alive in modern neuroscience.
So where does all this physics, philosophy, and neuroscience leave us as a society? Let's zoom back out for our final section. Section 5. Justice without moral blame, morality in a fixed world.
If our choices really are heavily influenced by prior causes, we run straight into moral responsibility skepticism. This is the argument that determinism completely undermines the concept of basic desert. Now, basic desert is just the traditional idea that someone intrinsically deserves to be praised or punished simply because of the action they performed. But if we lack ultimate control, or we lack full awareness of exactly why we do what we do, retributive punishment, things like the death penalty or punishing someone purely to make them suffer for a crime, suddenly becomes philosophically impossible to justify. And this brilliantly illustrates how society can actually still protect itself safely through non-retributive models. The most fascinating one here is incapacitation, often called the quarantine model. Think about it like this. If someone is carrying a highly infectious virus, we don't blame them morally, right? We don't punish them, but we absolutely do quarantine them to protect public safety. Skeptics argue we should treat dangerous criminal offenders the exact same way, incapacitating them for public safety, alongside robust rehabilitation to help them reform, and forward-looking deterrence to prevent future harm. It's a system built purely on compassion and safety rather than revenge.
So I want to leave you with this final really provocative thought. We've gone from the unbreakable laws of the cosmos to the spontaneous glitches of physics, right through the electrical firing of your own brain. If all of this implies that our actions are just part of a deeply interconnected web of necessity, and if we structured our entire society around a quarantine model of justice instead of a punishment model, how would that change your own life? How would it change the way you forgive others and the way you forgive yourself? Thank you so much for exploring this explainer on the architecture of necessity with me today. Keep asking those big questions.